If the Meatley and I really wanted to, we could be millionaires chilling on our yachts, but we want to make something cool. Or maybe it's because you just prefer fancy cars to yachts. Oh gosh, the license plate reads Bendy. He calls this one the Ink Demon. What a dick. Bendy and the Ink Machine was crazy popular, and it still is. The game itself was a tremendous commercial success, capitalizing on copious amounts of earned media via popular YouTube channels. Markiplier and Jacksepticeye's Let's Plays of the game are incredibly popular, and MatPat's game theory coverage of the enigmatic series certainly helped boost Bendy into the spotlight. A crazy amount of Bendy merchandise was released. Musicians like DAGames released songs based on the series, and popular animators went on to release music videos based on those songs. The characters were parodied and included everywhere. Bendy had become a mainstay of not just gaming, but of internet culture. Of course, with such staggering popularity comes incredible success. Big money. There have always been two sides to the Bendy debate. On one hand, the game's concept's really cool. The character designs and locations are really unique and interesting, and while it might feel cliche today, Bendy was one of the games to first popularize the now tired idea of old-fashioned cartoon characters or toys or mascots or whatever coming to life as demonic creatures. On the other hand, Bendy and the Ink Machine has often been criticized as boring. People call it a walking simulator, arguing that the gameplay amounts to a series of trivial fetch quests. They feel the game never lived up to the hype that the early chapters promised. Regardless of how one personally feels about Bendy, it's undeniable that the game had an enormous influence on the mascot horror trend that's arisen in the last couple years, with modern indie horror games like Poppy Playtime and Venge adopting similar aesthetics and concepts. Indeed, Bendy and the Ink Machine is an incredibly successful brand, and it would be foolish to dispute that. If the property was managed even remotely well, then I have no doubt it has generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue. That's objectively a success, and none of my opinions about the game can dispute that. Security Breach is similar. I'm not a fan of the game, but it's irrefutable that it was a tremendous financial success for Scott and Steel Wool. So I paid the $10 cost of entry, which was apparently half price due to a Steam sale. It seems the game is normally $20. And I went into Bendy and the Ink Machine with an open mind. I wanted to understand, why is Bendy so popular? Why was this game series so successful? Was the gameplay, story, and design really that excellent? I had to know. Quick background, I played the first two Bendy chapters on release, but I lost interest and put the game down shortly after that. Since then, the first two chapters had been substantially updated, so for all intents and purposes, this was my first full playthrough, and the majority of it was completely blind. I wasn't just open-minded, I was excited. Many people, including my friend Postra, who makes videos similar to mine, you should be subscribed to him if you aren't already, absolutely adore this game. With Postra's own massive Bendy video on the horizon, I wanted to try and understand what he loved so much about it. Beyond that though, I was excited to play such a visually striking game. Bendy looks really cool, and it felt like the perfect game to play on stream. The first thing that struck me were the visuals. The environments are incredibly striking, and even years later, the hyper-stylized look holds up really well, sort of like how Wind Waker remains gorgeous years later, as it wasn't striving for hyper-realism. Upon playing the first chapter of Bendy, I recalled one of its most frequent criticisms, the game being a walking simulator. I myself considered the game a walking simulator years ago when I played the first couple chapters. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with the game being a walking simulator, not necessarily at least. I don't mind a highly scripted, curated experience as long as it's fun. Despite my feelings about the developers, I have to admit that Poppy Playtime has a good amount of exciting, scary, fun moments, even though I would still argue that the game often feels like a walking simulator. So while Bendy Chapter 1 didn't have any especially interesting gameplay, the very cool aesthetic, interesting visuals, and novel story drew me in. I was excited to see more, just like I'm excited to beg you to please subscribe to my channel. Also, consider following me on Twitter. Anyway, Chapter 2 was where I began to grow frustrated with Bendy. You're forced to backtrack a bunch throughout the same area, which would be bad enough on its own, but on top of this, most of the hallways look the same, and it's really easy to get turned around and lost. None of the puzzles are that great, although the atmosphere remains pretty cool. The Bendy cutouts everywhere are creepy as heck, and the way they rebuild themselves when you look away is incredibly unsettling. Everywhere you look, there's that creepy smiling Bendy face, and it definitely builds tension. Unfortunately, the chapter doesn't capitalize much on this tension. Nothing very scary has happened. That's okay, a game doesn't need to be scary to be good, but I was under the impression that Bendy and the Ink Machine was going for spooky. Chapter 3 is interesting. It starts with a terrible escort mission that seems pretty randomly placed, a half-developed idea that somehow ended up making it into the final game. You then proceed to do a laundry list of errands for Alice Angel. You can tell they were starting to get more of a budget around chapter 3. The voice acting and writing is better, and the scope of the whole thing is a lot bigger. You wander around a pretty large area using staircases and elevators to navigate to different sections of the facility, completing tasks for Alice Angel. Unfortunately, these tasks are trivial. Go run around until you find these things, go run around until you find and smash all these things. They're just fetch quests. There's so little challenge to the gameplay. Dying simply results in you respawning without any actual consequence. I only actually encountered Bendy himself, the main enemy of the game, a handful of times throughout my playthrough. At one of those points, I got killed, respawned well past Bendy, and continued on. The game literally rewarded me for dying. It just skipped Bendy for me. It was weird, and it didn't help in making Bendy and the inky enemies feel intimidating. They're not. They don't feel intimidating because they aren't intimidating. Chapter 3 did have this pretty solid jump scare though, so respect to that. Oh god! Most of the combat with the ink enemies amounts to trade hits until you're about to die, then kite them for 6 seconds until your health regenerates, then repeat. It's awful. Even some of the boss fights amount to this. Bendy's combat is something that exists, but it doesn't feel good and it isn't fun. It's a half-developed idea that they never really went anywhere interesting with. Chapter 3 introduces the Projectionist, an enemy with a super cool design. It's not a particularly threatening enemy, it just patrols and chases you when it sees you, like the other enemies. Fleeing into a hiding space causes it to immediately lose sight of you and walk away, even if it obviously saw you enter, so it's not very scary. Still, it's cool. That said, the Projectionist is a good metaphor for a trend in Bendy's design. It's all style and no substance. Everything in this game is pretty stylish and fits with the aesthetic, but it's all superficial. Bendy's gameplay basically amounts to the same tropes we've seen in walking simulator horror games for years, with a level of polish that most indie horror entries don't see. It's really nothing more than that though. Chapter 4 has really cool parts too. We fight a giant carnival ride and it's definitely impressive to look at. The mechanics of the boss fight itself aren't anything special, but the designs and animations look great. It's also really obvious what you have to do, leading to a very satisfying, spectacular experience. This is one of the high points of Bendy and the Ink Machine, in my opinion. We reach a carnival area where we have to complete another series of fetch questy busy work tasks in order to power up a haunted house ride. The actual tasks you complete unfortunately amount to the same old go here, get this, take it here, activate this type of stuff that we've been doing all game. The environment is more visually interesting, which makes these fetch quests more tolerable, but they still suck. They're still just reasons to make you wander through the areas they built, and none of it feels connected to the protagonist's actual goals. None of it feels connected to the story. I'm still not sure why we came back to the studio, but I really have no idea what fighting a giant carnival ride or repairing countless mechanical devices has to do with that. This is where my troubles with the game would truly begin. Notice this Bendy logo in the bottom right corner of the screen? That appears when the game is loading or auto-saving. Unfortunately, upon powering up the haunted house and initiating the Boris fight at the end of chapter 4, something very strange happened to my game. The saving indicator never disappeared. Bendy's face just sat there on the screen, mocking me, tormenting me. At the time, I didn't notice it. Nobody really did. I went on to complete the Boris fight, which was fine. It wasn't as cool as the Bertram fight from earlier, but fine. Upon finishing the fight, I had completed Chapter 4 and unlocked Chapter 5. Chapter 5 begins with a 5-minute cutscene where you're imprisoned by another version of Boris and another friendly version of Alice Angel. Afterwards, there's this long boat segment. It's boring and easy, though I did die to it once, simply because the game is so janky. Everything you do has a slight delay to it. In this case, the throttle to the boat hadn't become active yet, and I was spamming the key to activate it. However, once you finally do activate the throttle, you need to hold the key down for some reason, and in my frantic mashing, I missed that the throttle had become active. I then had to wait another 10 million years for the switch to reset before I could activate it again and hold the key down, leading to a death. Fortunately, in spite of the weird issue with the autosave indicator, I respawned right where I expected to, at the start of the boat section. Whatever happened at the end of Chapter 4, it seemed like the game had fixed itself, which was a relief. I continued playing and fought Sammy, which is a really stupid boss fight. You just trade hits, run, let your health regen, repeat. It's dumb. After that, your allies arrive and there's this big epic battle sequence. Problem is the combat in this game is pretty boring and adding more enemies doesn't make it that much more interesting. This is also where my game bugged out. Alice and Boris just stood there and none of the other waves of enemies spawned. Wait, why aren't they moving? Wait, did the game just glitch out? Am I soft locked? Okay, fine, whatever, I'll just quit and reload. Why did the game just delete the last 30 minutes of my progress, sending me back to chapter 4? Oh, come on, Bendy. Whatever, I'll just do the boss fight again, watch the 5-minute cutscene again, do the whole boat section again, do another boss fight again, then do the whole big battle again, then there. Okay, great, my game is saved. See that? I quit to the menu and it says, continue, chapter 5. Everything is good. The game saved this time. Let me just quit and relaunch the game really quick, and Bendy and the ink machine just deleted all of that. 30 minutes of progress, twice in a row. It just deleted my saved file and reverted to an older one. 1 second ago, it said my save was at chapter 5. I closed the game, reopened it, and now all that progress is gone. And it says I'm on chapter 4. I have the achievement for beating chapter 4, yet it says that I have yet to unlock chapter 5 on this file. Now I need to ride the ride, fight the boss, watch the 5-minute cutscene for the 3rd time, ride the boat again, fight another boss, then do a whole wave combat section again, praying that the game doesn't glitch out again just to get back to where I was. What the fuck? In the end, I just downloaded a completed save file from the internet and used chapter select to start again from chapter 5. I still had to do the stupid boat sequence again, but at least I didn't have to fight Boris for a 3rd time. Still, this is totally unacceptable, and most players wouldn't put up with this. I was streaming and knew I wanted to finish the game for this video, so I had the perseverance to go find a save file online and continue. However, I totally understand someone saying, you know what? Fuck this game, after the game erased my progress twice and made me replay the same half hour of gameplay 3 times in a row. I completely understand someone refunding the game on Steam after that. The game concludes with a boss fight against Bendy. It's cool, I guess. The animation is good, as is to be expected by this point. It was also neat to finally be in some areas that look different from the rest of the game. Everything up until now is mostly just corridors and caves, and it was refreshing to see this big ink temple thing, the throne of Bendy. I don't know. Unfortunately, Bendy and the Ink Machine is a game without any real mechanics, and thus the final boss fight simply amounts to running around pulling a bunch of levers. There's nothing more to any of the gameplay beyond that. While Bendy introduces a bunch of ideas like melee combat, using ink to construct specific pieces needed to complete puzzles, and other things of that nature, it never expands on any of these enough to make them meaningful. So while it's cool that I first go here to grab the ink and then go turn it into a pipe, then go here to use that pipe to solve a puzzle, it's ultimately still just a fetch quest. It's just an excuse to go here, then here, then here. Bendy tries to disguise this gameplay in a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, most of the gameplay boils down to go here and do this. Considering we spent the vast majority of the game flipping literal and figurative switches, it's sort of fitting that the final boss fight amounts to just running around dodging an enemy whilst you flip switches. Honestly, the fight with Bertram was more mechanically interesting than this. At least the Bendy fight is better than the Sammy fight though. That one is just terrible. Having finished the game and feeling that it was so mediocre, I had to wonder, why is Bendy so popular? Why did this game make $1 bajillion and allow the Meatly and whoever said this douchey quote to potentially be living it up on yachts? What inspired talented artists like Eckercoaster to make these incredible animations based off popular songs by talented musicians who themselves were inspired by the game? What was all the hype about? Why did people go so crazy for this game? I mean, yes, it's undeniable that Bendy has an incredibly cool aesthetic and a really eye-catching, stylish thing going for it. I understand the appeal of that. However, a lot of games look great, but most don't achieve a fraction of the success that Bendy did. What made Bendy in particular so crazy successful? I have 2 theories. The first is the chapter-based release of the game, which allowed for the hype train to gather tremendous momentum. A chapter would drop, we'd play it, we'd watch our favorite Let's Players play it, and we'd watch MatPat's theory videos on it. We'd engage in the communities, look at fan art, and wonder what secrets the future chapters might reveal. Then, a few months later, a new chapter would come out. We'd play it over an hour or 2, and the cycle would repeat. I think the chapter-based release allowed the game to build up hype and created natural exit points for players. Instead of binging the game all at once like I did and getting tired of it, people experienced it a bit at a time, and they had long periods to digest what they had just experienced and get really hyped for the next chapter. Today though, Bendy and the Ink Machine is a full game. You buy all of the chapters at once and they flow seamlessly into each other. Without the breaks between chapters and without that time to ruminate on what you just experienced, I feel a lot of the more meaningful moments from the chapters might have been lost. When chapter 2 and 3 first came out, most players hadn't played the prior chapter for a couple of months, so it was fun and exciting to revisit this world that they had vague, fond memories of. Now that we can play straight through the game, it's a lot easier for the individual chapters to lose their impact and blur together. Even now as I write this script, I'm constantly having to check whether something happened in chapter 3 or 4, because I don't really have a clear memory as to where one ended and the other began. At the time of writing, I literally played the game yesterday, so I think that should probably say a lot regarding how unmemorable this portion of the game was to me. My other theory for Bendy's unwarranted popularity is that the game just isn't that scary. It has its moments, and a lot of the designs are really excellent and creepy, but Bendy and the Ink Machine is not an especially terrifying game. We already know that the mascot horror genre is popular amongst the younger demographic, many of whom might not be comfortable playing these games themselves. It's why properties like Five Nights at Freddy's and Poppy Playtime are so popular on YouTube. There are a lot of people who don't want to play those games but still want to vicariously experience them, and do so through their favorite streamers and Let's Players, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to enjoy games however they want. However, because Bendy isn't that scary, a lot more people are able to enjoy it directly. The player pool is more inclusive. Younger gamers who might be overwhelmed by a more intense horror experience like Outlast are able to participate directly instead of just watching other people play it. Of course, the series that players of all ages are able to enjoy is going to thrive and become very popular, and Bendy fits that mold perfectly. I'm not saying that Bendy isn't scary at all. I jumped at several points, and there were many creepy moments. The whole premise of the game is creepy, and the aesthetics and environment of the game are undeniably cool. However, I just don't think it was a great game. It wasn't awful, it was certainly better than Security Breach, and for the $10 I paid for it, I don't think it was bad value. It was fair. Bendy and the Ink Machine is a totally fair experience for $10. Would I recommend it? No, absolutely not. However, there's a free demo, so go check it out for yourself. If you enjoy it, then yeah, go buy it, because you'll probably enjoy the rest and find it worth the cost of admission. It's not a ripoff. I just don't understand why anyone would enjoy it so much though. Postra absolutely loves Bendy and is working on a huge video on the series right now. I respect Postra and know them to have good taste in games, and I'm really interested to hear why he loves Bendy so much. Plus, it's just always fun to hear people talk about stuff that they're really passionate about, so looking forward to that. Still, I just don't get it. I just don't understand why people love Bendy and the Ink Machine so much. Again, it's not bad, it's just mediocre. I have my two theories, but they're just theories, and I still can't really grasp why this game became so popular, why the merchandising was so successful, or why people are so excited for the potential sequel, Bendy and the Dark Revival. What do you think? Did you play Bendy and the Ink Machine? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it lived up to the hype surrounding it? If not, why do you think there's so much hype surrounding this game? And why do you think people go so crazy for it? To be clear, I didn't hate the game. I was frustrated by the glitches I experienced that caused me to lose so much progress, but it wasn't an unpleasant experience. I just found it mediocre, or mid as you kids say these days. I just don't see what the big deal is. Am I missing something? Thanks for watching.